On the next segment, we have Going Underground. Which model should we follow? Amish or Hasidic Jews? So
Yeah,
I'll turn it over to you, Ryan.
So I've been thinking for a while about going underground. I mean, here we are in this catacombs, and it seems that the pressure is going to be put on us more and more by the establishment, whether that's the political establishment or the establishment in the church, the bishops. And so I began to look at those cultures and people who live in the world, but they live separately, and they have a really strong identity. They don't lose young people to the world, to conversions or atheism or whatever. And I grabbed two groups who I know something about and have done some studies on, and that's Amish and the Hasidic Jews. And I guess what brought this up again recently was, well, obviously because we have this coming persecution, but there's a really good YouTube series by a filmmaker who has a YouTube channel, Peter Santello, and he was invited to visit the Hasidic community in New York. And he did quite a number of documentary shorts, 10, 20, 30-minute shows that are all on YouTube. I don't know, it might be 14 episodes or whatever, but it's really good. And so that kind of prompted me to think about this even more and more. So I made this chart, and I sent it to you, John, and you can probably show some of this as we're talking, or link to it, have a link in the description. But this compares, in one column you have how the Amish do things, and the next column is the Hasidic Jews, and then I go category by category. And we should all learn from this, because our lives will probably be changed, and this will be useful. You have to think about this. No idea I propose is, oh, that's the way it must be. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, let's think about these things. So the first row here would be the living arrangements. So for the Amish, they live near each other in neighborhoods, within a horse ride's distance, and they own their own houses, farmhouses, basically. Hasidic Jews, they all live near each other in neighborhoods. They have to live within walking distance of a synagogue, because they have to go there and pray. I don't know if it's every day, but definitely on the Sabbath they have to go. They often live in these apartment buildings, or what you might call a tenement, although that has a negative connotation. I mean, they're just living normal New York City apartments. They often use Section 8 housing vouchers to help pay the rent, because for the most part they can't work in these super duper high paying jobs. These, the Jews or whoever owns the buildings or the neighborhood or whatever, they do a really good job of keeping the neighborhood Jewish, in the sense that they won't advertise things publicly. They only advertise amongst Jews, so that therefore you keep your people in that neighborhood as your neighbors. They grow their footprint by purchasing apartment buildings and buying out the non-Jews, so that way they can expand, take over another block. They have some money pulled up, or a rich guy, and they buy an apartment building, and then they pay the people who live there, non-Jews, the Gentiles, to move away, and then they'll go and rent out the building to Jews. Even though, this is an interesting thing, even though they all live relatively poorly for Americans, all their neighborhoods are safe and drug-free. And if you watch the series by Peter Santello, you'll see they kind of have their own police force and community. They've got these helps that are there, these Jews helping each other. So that leads me to the next row here, which is community life. So let's talk about politics here. So the Amish aren't necessarily involved in politics, even though they do vote.
For Trump.
Yeah, they all voted for Trump. If you live near any Amish, that was all it is. Yeah, I think some of them even had signs, which they usually don't do. They don't really socialize with those outside their community, even though they might work with English people. And English is non-Amish, if you don't know anything about Amish. So it's funny, Amish call the non-Amish English, and Jews call the non-Jews Gentiles, and so, or Goyim. And so you kind of have this this interesting thing where you have the insiders and the outside. Amish, they kind of self-police each other in the sense that they keep an eye and see what that guy, he's got a car, he's not allowed, so he'll be denounced to the local bishop, basically the Amish Inquisition, and they'll say you gotta live by the rules or whatever, otherwise you'll get kicked out. Now the Hasidic Jews, so they are strongly involved in local politics. I even read an article about a certain community where they always vote as a bloc, but because of that they can swing elections one way or the other, and they'll get things their way. And that's the way Catholics used to be when we lived in the ghettos in the big cities, is we were able to vote as a bloc and control local politics and elections. And then when we all moved to the suburbs and became WASPs, then that all went away, unfortunately. The Jews have a community force, which is basically a police and fire and ambulance that takes care of the community. I mean, they don't work in lieu of the police, fire, and ambulance, but because they're fellow Jews who are there in the neighborhood, they're able to get there and figure out what the problem is. Like I remember in one of the Peter Santello videos, Shlomi Zeitz, he is the Hasidic Jew who invited Peter Santello there. So Shlomi mentioned that if there's an anti-Semitic attack, somebody throws a brick through a Jewish shop or whatever, he said they'll be the community force will be there in like a minute, and they can identify. They're sort of like security guards. They can tackle this guy, get pictures, find out who he is. They can even do some what do they call that? Citizen's arrest on people. So that's something to consider going about that. If you're able to find yourself in kind of a Catholic ghetto, so to speak, well, it might be a good idea to have your own community force. So let's talk about family. The Amish only marry within the religion. Family is the number one priority in life. They marry young, I think between the ages of 18, 23, maybe younger, 16 or something, I'm not sure. They have large families, and they have these strong normal gender roles where you have women at home cooking, cleaning, raising children, maybe running a grocery store kind of thing, farm market or whatever. And then you have the men who do farming or skilled or unskilled labor. A lot of them have businesses to put on roofs, do fencing, do cabinetry, that kind of thing. Now the Hasidic Jews, also they only marry within the religion. Family is the top priority. They marry young, 16 or 18 to 23-ish. They have large families, and they have the same gender roles that the Amish have. And so we can learn from this. I mean, one thing that in Catholicism is that just you have so many people who don't care as far as who they marry. So they'll meet a guy who's a heathen or a Protestant or a Muslim or a Jew, and then think nothing of marrying this guy. Whereas in the Amish and the Hasidic community, you'd basically be excommunicated if you did that. Like, what are you doing? And even the Bible says, St. Paul says, don't be unequally yoked. So don't marry somebody who's not a Catholic. In Catholicism, family is often not a priority anymore. You have the job, you'll get a divorce. We only want 2.3 kids. People are getting all these degrees and going into debt, and so they're not getting married until they're older, 30 years old or whatever. And that prohibits you from having a large number of kids. And then you have women working, and so the family and the home life is not a priority at that point in time. The next row is education. So the Amish run their own elementary schools, which don't take government money. That way they're able to teach what they want and not have to teach the alphabet soup, transgender, that kind of thing. They don't take non-Amish students. The schools are taught by young unmarried women who they don't have to pay them a lot. The Amish stop school after 8th grade because this higher learning is not necessary. They don't have high schools. They don't go to college. And the education, the technical trade learning is learned from fathers and uncles. So there's no need to go to a truck driving school or whatever. You just learn how to farm from your dad or uncle, how to put up fences, do roofs, make sheds, that kind of thing. All that's learned from your father, uncles, or friends. The Hasidics, they run their own elementary and high schools. Also don't take government money because that would force them to obey whatever the government, whatever Caesar says how to run their school. They don't take non-Jewish students, and then that way there's no pandering and being ecumenical or whatever. For the most part, they don't go to college. They learn trades from their father and uncles, similar to the Amish. Some of them do white-collar work, which they learn on the job, and you can do that if you have family members or other Hasidics who do white-collar work. They can teach you, and if it's a Hasidic business, then you're only going to hire Hasidics, so you don't need some piece of paper from Georgetown or New York University or whatever to be able to make a living. The next row is employment. So the Amish mostly, I think I mentioned this before, farming and animal work, crafting, making cabinets and sheds, manual labor, which would be roofing or fencing, and then selling vegetables, fruits, meats, whatever. The Jews have a lot more different kinds of jobs. So in the neighborhood, there's the butcher, the kosher foods, the tailor, the grocery store, driving taxis. There's a lot of different jobs that they can do. And they're not, because their focus is on growing the community, having children, saving their soul, they're not concerned about making a lot of money. So, a one-income family with a stay-at-home mom, and living in New York City, they have to often collect welfare or food stamps and get Section 8 housing, which is interesting. Usually if you live in a neighborhood filled with like welfare recipients and Section 8 housing, it's a dump filled with drugs. But because these people are all religious and live among other Jews, they have a really nice neighborhood. It doesn't matter whether they're rich or poor. They have, it's like a Latin Mass community, and everybody lives there. So clothing. Amish, of course, have a distinctive clothing for men and women, the plain dress. And Hasidics have a distinctive clothing for men, which I'm sure you've seen, the side curls and furry funny hats and whatnot. I noticed the women really don't dress too differently than modern women. They wear conservative clothes, modest clothes. I'd say the kind of clothes that Hasidic women wear are the kind of things that women wear to the Latin Mass. Kind of like long skirts, not something like from the year 1910, but it just looks like a normal skirt that they're wearing, and blouse, and they cover their hair. One thing that I found weird is a lot of them wear wigs. So they have this thing that they can't show their hair outside the house. Okay, I understand that, but why wear, fake hair? And you would think they would wear a veil. I don't know why they wear a wig, but Muslims wear a hijab, so I don't understand why Jewish women don't wear that. Okay, music. So I don't think Amish listen to music. I do know that they sing hymns during their Protestant services, and so that's one introduction to music that they have. The Hasidic Jews, they listen to their own Yiddish music. They do a lot of singing and dancing because it's part of their religion to sing songs and dance and be happy. They play a lot of musical instruments, the piano, the guitar, the violin. So they're very musical. Language. So the Amish use Swiss German in their conversations with each other. When they're talking to an Englishman, a non-Amish, they use English. And in their prayers and hymns, in their religious services, they use High German, which is a different dialect than Swiss German. I don't know if they're mutually intelligible. But so that's 3 languages. Now the Jews, the Hasidics, they use Yiddish in everyday conversation. They use English with non-Jews. And then in their prayers and hymns, they sing in Hebrew. So also they have 3 languages. So let's take a look at their religion. The Amish have a high level of commitment. I mean, you have to live separately from the modern world. They have a formal profession at, I don't know if it's 16 or 18 or something about that, where, you grow up as a kid, you haven't made this decision for Christ, or whatever they call it. So there's an opportunity to have this wild period called the Rumspringa, and you can go out and, carry on and all this stuff before you decide, I want to be baptized and become a member of this Amish sect. And you do that, and now you're a member for life. You're bound by the rules. But you're free to, go off and quit and become an Englishman or whatever. Membership is not optional. If you leave the group, you're shunned, and I don't think they have anything to do with you. I'm not sure if there's a distinction between quitting after you've been baptized versus growing up and not taking their baptism and instead going to live as an English. I don't know about that. They believe in the 3rd commandment, keep holy the Lord's Day, so there's rules about what you can do on Sunday, just like we should do. The Jews, when it comes to their religion, obviously there's a high level of commitment there. I know from watching the video that I think the men go to the synagogue, I don't know if it's twice a day, maybe it's just on the Sabbath they go twice a day, but they have a regular prayer life. Membership is not optional. If you leave the religion, you're shunned, and your family won't have anything to do with you because you've turned your back on them and on God. They have a distinctive kosher diet about the things they eat and don't eat, and then distinctive Sabbath rules about... One thing that I thought was interesting is on the Sabbath, they're not using phones. Most of these people, they said the internet is stupid, TV's bad, and we don't want anything to do with that. Shlomi uses his cell phone during the week for business, but he says when I'm at home I don't bother with it, and then on the Sabbath the thing is off. All these Hasids, the phone is off from Friday night to Saturday night, and because the focus is on God and family, it's a respite. Technology. I just mentioned this. So for the Amish, internet and smartphones are only used for business, not at home. Amish don't have TV or electronics. Electricity is only used in the business shop and not at home for running things like drills or saws or whatever. They don't drive cars, but there'll be a passenger in a car to go to a job site. For the Jews, internet and smartphones are used only for business and not at home. They don't have cable TV, but they do have their own Hasidic movies and music, which they'll listen to. So they'll have TVs with DVD players, CD players, radios, and CD players in cars. They use electricity, cars, and modern appliances. Now let's talk about the medical. So the Amish collectively have a community kind of health insurance where they pool their money, or at least pool the bills, so they can pay each other's medical bills. And there are some of those that are sort of grandfathered into the Obamacare. I know I had some friends one who was a member of one of these health sharing plans. I don't know if it was particularly Amish or if it was associated with some kind of Protestantism, but it was ethical. It didn't contribute anything, didn't pay for abortions or transgenders or things like that. And it seemed to be the same as any other health insurance to me. The Jews, I'm not sure how they do this. I know that there's Jewish doctors. Maybe they give them a break and help them for free or low cost. Maybe they also pull money just like the Amish do. I'm not entirely sure. Finance. The Amish pull money together as a family to go out and buy farms and businesses, and then this way they don't have to borrow from a bank. The Jews, I think that they pool their money to buy houses, businesses, and neighborhoods. I know that there are some rich Jews who will either are Hasids or help them out in terms of financing to do these business deals. As I mentioned before, a good number of them collect welfare benefits because they're poor, but they live in a nice neighborhood, so even though they're poor and don't have hardly any money and drive a beat up car, or maybe don't have a car at all, it's okay because it's a Jewish neighborhood and everybody knows everybody. There's no crime, there's no drug dealers. It's like normal people, but just without a lot of stuff. Sports. So the Amish, I'm unaware of any of their kids playing an organized sport, but they do a lot of playing amongst themselves with unorganized sports. So it's not a problem. They're outside. There's nothing to do inside in the summer. So go out and throw a ball and play tag, chase horses or ride horses or whatever. The Hasids, the kids play local sports. They have like basketball leagues and things like that amongst each other. So their kids will play those sports. They have dance classes and whatnot, and clubs for kids. In that sense, they're much more normal, like Catholics, I guess. And the evangelization. I'm not aware of the Amish doing any evangelization whatsoever. They kind of have their sect, and their goal is to save their souls and keep people in the sect and have children. The Hasidic Jews, they don't evangelize non-Jews, but they do evangelize. There's one particular sect, I don't remember which one it is, but they do a lot of outreach to non-observant Jews or more liberal Jews to try to get them to become more observant and to join their community. And so there you go, John. That's quite a number of things there, but it's a decent brainstorm, and talk amongst yourselves on how to live that out. We've had conversations about this stuff today off screen before we started the cameras rolling, and there's a lot of material there. It's interesting.